Welcome to JW Broadcasting. On our program for this month, we'll hear the experience of Brother Jim Brown. He studied the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses off and on for 30 years. What motivated him to make changes and dedicate his life to Jehovah? When serious problems arise in marriage, how will Bible principles help you? The candid and heartfelt interviews with these couples will show how the Bible saved their marriages. It's important for youth to develop good spiritual habits early. How can teenagers get the most out of their daily Bible reading? We have a lot to look forward to on the April 2018 edition of JW Broadcasting. As God's Word touches the heart of a Bible student, they may need to make significant changes to live by Jehovah's standards. We start our program with just such a story. Meet Jim Brown, a brother from Key Largo, Florida, in the United States. Before becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses, he was on a dangerous path of vice and violence. What changes did he have to make on the road to true worship?
I'm 53 years old. I was known as a troublemaker. I was fighting in the bars, come to a point where you begin to enjoy it.
He was flat out scary. He was a very mean and violent man. So everybody kind of kept their distance from him.
My language was detestable. I would make grown men blush by the things that I could say and things that I would do. I was involved with some bikers, and they were trying to prospect me into getting into their club. Things were escalating.
We got married very young, and we were 17.
And had my oldest daughter.
I was the mom, and he lived a life of being out with his friends and partying.
About that time, my wife started studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses. It was a big change for her, but she explained the reasoning behind it. I couldn't argue with it. She talked me into studying. I studied from 20 years old to 30. I always seen it it was good. I knew this is where I needed to be. Somehow I just could never break free of the person that I was.
My mom always raised us in the truth growing up, and that's what we knew. So then to see my dad, where he was so different, but yet believed it to be the truth, and then to see that his lifestyle didn't do him any good, was kind of a good example of a bad example, if that makes sense.
I was afraid of the change. People accepted me for who I was. Being the tough guy, being Jimmy Brown.
The scripture comes to mind, I planted, Apollos watered, God kept making it grow. Many brothers have studied with Jim from time to time over the years. I just happened to be the one at the time in his life when he was taking the truth and running with it.
Wanted to be a better person. I truly knew that this was just not a way of life that I wanted anymore.
He changed his friends, he changed his life, he changed his dress and grooming, he changed his speech patterns, he changed the way he was a grandfather, he changed the way he was a father, he changed the way he was a husband. Everything changed about him.
I knew of the work that witnesses do, going out door to door, talking to people. I thought I could never do that. Whoa, me going door to door, I'm gonna run into people that I know, that I drank with for years and years. How can I face them now? I had always told my wife it would be much easier for me to become a witness if I didn't live here. But how wrong I was. Because what a witness my changes have been to so many people in town. One of my favorite things to do is bridge witnessing with my granddaughter. people are fishing on the bridge. Some have been there all night. I even have return visits that I do because people regularly come down on the weekend to fish on the bridges. I seize every opportunity. My kids laugh at me.
He'll witness to anybody, anytime, anywhere.
You'll see some raggedy-taggedy old rough guy that he knew and brought to the Kingdom Hall. In a few weeks, he's got a new suit on, got a haircut, clean-shaven. This is the effect he has on the people that he comes in contact with.
I love life now. I have true friends. I know that I have hope for the future. Jehovah has seen something in me, and he's brought it to light. That I am a good person. I can be a good human being. I can help other people. I can be loved by him. It's priceless.
Are you a Bible student who is undecided on whether to commit your way to Jehovah? Take note of the trust and confidence Brother Brown showed in dedicating his life to God. Be assured that Jehovah will guide and care for us if we give him the opportunity. Brother Brown now enjoys the blessing of living under Jehovah's protection, serving as a ministerial servant and regular pioneer. You too can experience Jehovah's spiritual protection, as we'll learn throughout our program. The theme of our broadcast is a very comforting one: being securely wrapped in the bag of life with Jehovah. Perhaps the thought of being securely wrapped makes us think of a safely swaddled baby, or being enveloped in the warm blanket on a cold night. In the Bible, these words were uttered by the woman Abigail to Jehovah's servant David. To understand the meaning of the words and their importance today, let's review the context of 1 Samuel chapter 25. David and 600 of his men were dwelling as fugitives. They eventually encountered men who worked as shepherds for Abigail's husband, Nabal. David and his men began to help guard Nabal's flocks and serve as a protective wall for Nabal's flocks and servants against thieves and invaders who roamed through the wilderness. It was likely challenging to find enough food for 600 soldiers. So David decided to send 10 of his men to kindly ask Nabal for food in repayment for the services that they had performed. But at 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 10 and 11, note Nabal's reply. Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? Nowadays, many servants are breaking away from their masters. Do I have to take my bread and my water and the meat that I butchered from my shearers and give it to men who come from who knows where?" This was not the response that David and his men were expecting to hear. The Bible describes Nabal as a very harsh, worthless man, and this is certainly evidenced by his reply. He screamed insults at the messengers and ridiculed David, comparing him to a runaway servant. So David decided to take matters into his own hands and resolve the situation the way many people today might, by fighting. In verse 13, he has 400 of his men prepare themselves for battle with one mission: to wipe out every male in Nabal's household. Eventually, word got back to Abigail about what her husband had done. Without telling Nabal, she gathered an abundance of food and went out to meet David. When she met up with him, she poured out her heart at length, asking David to forgive her personally and making a powerful plea for mercy on behalf of her husband and her household. She acknowledged that Nabal was a foolish and senseless man. So she urged David not to take any action that might bring blood guilt upon him or cause him to be affected by a troubled conscience. As Abigail concluded her appeal to David, notice what she tells him in verse 29, the theme of our discussion. When someone rises up to pursue you and seeks your life, the life of my Lord will be wrapped securely in the bag of life with Jehovah your God. But the lives of your enemies he will hurl away like stones from a sling. Just as we might wrap up something valuable in order to protect and preserve it, Abigail was telling David that is how his life would be in Jehovah's hands. Jehovah would protect and preserve David's life from his enemies, as long as he did not seek to save himself by personal efforts, but waited on Jehovah, trusting in the one to whom he owed his life. What lessons can we learn from this account? As David saw, his relationship with Jehovah was a protection. In verse 32, he acknowledges that God had sent Abigail with the warning. We learn that Jehovah's spiritual protection for us is related to the quality of our relationship with him. That's why the Bible tells us at James chapter 4, verse 8, draw close to God, and he will draw close to you. Jehovah invites us to draw near to him because he wants to receive us into his favor as his friends. When we dedicate our lives and vow to serve him unconditionally, we gain an approved standing with him. We're figuratively put in that bag of life. And as we work to develop a close, personal relationship with him, then we can experience Jehovah's friendship and protection. We would never want to restrict Jehovah's protection by not looking to him for guidance or relying on our own thinking. Now, can we think of areas or situations that might require us to wait on Jehovah? Perhaps we're experiencing literal opposition at work or at school. Like Abigail, we might face the challenge of living with a difficult marriage mate. Maybe we're battling a health issue, and loyalty is needed regarding our medical choices. Or it may be that we live in a country where we cannot preach freely, or we face opposition for our beliefs. Really, it could be any number of situations, but it is our response, the way we handle the situation, that indicates how much we are allowing Jehovah to help us. Do we trust him enough that we can leave the matter in his hands and see how he works things out in our behalf? We have to manifest Christian qualities in order to do that. Think about what qualities displayed by Abigail and David impress you most. Two that come to mind are patience and reasonableness. Patience is closely connected with endurance and enables one to put up with difficult circumstances while maintaining a positive attitude. Reasonableness describes a person who is fair, considerate, willing to yield to others. How well this describes Abigail. It must have been quite a challenge to live with someone like Nabal. But nowhere do we read that she was ever disrespectful of him or that she belittled him. Even when she referred to him as senseless in verse 25, from Jehovah's standpoint, her comments were proper because Nabal's actions put his entire household in danger. How about David? He was in a position of authority, but he showed great patience and reasonableness in listening to Abigail and having the good sense to know that she was right. That's not always easy to do in the heat of the moment or when we're upset. Perhaps you recall that at our Don't Give Up regional convention last year, when discussing 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 8, we learned a nice formula that can help us to cultivate and strengthen Christian qualities. We were encouraged to study them, meditate on them, and put them into practice. If we apply this formula with the qualities of patience and reasonableness, it can help us to endure our trials successfully. And we're confident that Jehovah will supply us with whatever power we need so that we will not tire out as we continue to endure and put our trust in him. In addition to developing these qualities, something else that can help us is our spiritual routine. Our consistent routine of study, meeting attendance, and the ministry will help us remain busy, stay active, and make good decisions. We'll have no time to become curious or occupied with the things this world has to offer. It's good to remember the people during the days of Haggai. When the Jews lost their focus and started neglecting Jehovah's temple, they lost his blessing and protection spiritually. And what was the result? Well, notice how Haggai draws our attention to a different type of bag. At Haggai chapter 1, verse 6. You have sown much seed, but you harvest little. You eat, but it is not to satisfaction. You drink, but you do not drink your fill. You put on clothing, but no one gets warm. The one who hires himself out puts his wages in a bag full of holes. The Jews sowed seed, but had a meager harvest. They lacked enough food to satisfy their needs. They were unable to clothe themselves with warm garments. Because Jehovah withheld his blessings, Haggai rightly compared them to a man who puts his wages in a bag full of holes. Imagine the disappointment of discovering that hard-earned wages had gradually disappeared through a leaking bag. Of course, our focus is not material prosperity, because whether we have an abundance of material things or not, if we fail to receive Jehovah's blessing, our spirituality is jeopardized. So we must be determined to never lose our focus and keep Jehovah in the forefront of our lives. When we examine the life of David, it's evident that he enjoyed a preserved and protected relationship with God. When we read the book of Psalms, take note of how David describes Jehovah's protective care. In Psalm 18, Psalm 31, and Psalm 34, as he went through distresses, just beautiful accounts. Now, did David always do everything the right way? No. Think of his encounter with Nabal. While his angry reaction was understandable, his way of expressing it was not correct. But David learned from his mistakes, and each new trial that he went through strengthened his relationship with Jehovah even more. For example, after the ordeal with Nabal, a short time later, David married Abigail. They were still fugitives, but he found a king that befriended them and gave David's men and family a land to dwell in. One day, while all the men were away, the Amalekites raided and burned the city and carried off all the men's wives, children, and flocks. Upon returning and seeing what had happened, David and his men wept. Grief quickly turned to bitterness, and David's men spoke of stoning him. This was likely quite stressful for David. He was concerned for the safety of his family, and likely he was frustrated that his men had turned on him. Maybe he felt disrespected again, as he had with Nabal. So how would he handle this situation? We get a glimpse of David's feelings at 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 6. David was very distressed because the men were talking of stoning him, for all the men had become very bitter over the loss of their sons and daughters. But notice, how did David handle the situation? The verse continues, "But David strengthened himself by Jehovah his God." How did he do this? Verse 8 says, David inquired of Jehovah. This time, David has a different thought process and response. Immediately, he remembers to consult Jehovah. Isn't this a nice reminder that when you and I are going through difficult trials and situations, we want to immediately pray to Jehovah and seek his direction through the pages of his word, the Bible? This is essential for our spiritual protection. So in review, as we face difficult situations in life, may we look for opportunities to show and develop our Christian qualities, such as patience and reasonableness. These qualities show Jehovah that we want to be like him that we have the mental disposition of Christ, and that we will allow him to guide us constantly. Next, may we keep focused and busy in the work of the Lord. By drawing close to Jehovah through prayer and engaging in spiritual activities, we make the best of our situation now. But we will also find everlasting protection in Jehovah's hands, safely swaddled and securely wrapped in his bag of life. We need to rely on Jehovah's guidance even in the most severe trials. It's possible that you may face a life-threatening issue where there's no desirable option, but a decision is necessary. In the following dramatization, Emma is faced with a situation like this. What will she do? And how will God's word help her to make a decision?
Toen Thomas en ik ontdekten dat ik zwanger was, waren we totaal in shock. Maar we werden steeds enthousiaster. En wat waren we blij toen we ons kindje voor het eerst zagen. Het maakte ons echt niet uit of het een jongen of een meisje was, als het maar gezond was. Maar toen zei de arts dat de baby waarschijnlijk een ernstige afwijking zou hebben en misschien zelfs zou sterven. We waren er helemaal kapot van. Mijn man en zijn ouders zijn geen getuigen. Maar zij vinden ook dat abortus verkeerd is. Toch vonden ze dat we naar de arts moesten luisteren. Ik kon niet geloven dat dit me overkwam. Ik dacht zelfs, waarom laat Jehovah dit toe? Deze beproeving is te zwaar. Thomas vroeg wat ik wilde. Ik zei dat ik nooit abortus zou kunnen plegen. Hij vond ook dat het normaal gesproken verkeerd was, maar dat God het in ons geval wel zou begrijpen. Ik vond het zo moeilijk. Ik werd onder druk gezet om iets te doen waarvan ik wist dat het verkeerd was. Maar iedereen zei dat dit het beste was voor mijn kindje. Ik had me nog nooit zo alleen gevoeld. Ik had Jehovah meer dan ooit nodig, dus stortte ik mijn hart bij hem uit. Ik deed nazoekwerk. Ik liet Thomas een Bijbeltekst zien. Als mannen met elkaar vechten en een zwangere vrouw verwonden en er iemand komt te overlijden, dan geldt een leven voor een leven. Jehovah ziet zelfs het onopzettelijk doden van een ongeboren kind als een ernstige zonde. Hoe konden wij ons kind dan opzettelijk doden? Ik legde duidelijk aan de arts uit wat ik besloten had.
Thank you. I'll have a look at that later.
En ook aan mijn schoonouders. De kans bestond dat de diagnose verkeerd was En daar hoopten we op. Maar helaas. Mijn dochtertje Amy heeft na haar geboorte maar een paar weken geleefd. Haar verliezen was het zwaarste wat ik ooit heb meegemaakt. Maar Jehovah gaf me de moed om mijn geloof uit te leggen aan mijn man, mijn schoonouders en het medisch personeel. Ze hadden veel respect voor mijn sterke geloof. En ik heb nooit spijt gehad van mijn besluit. Ook al heeft Amy maar een paar weken geleefd, ik ben heel dankbaar voor die tijd. Ik weet dat Jehovah zich elk detail van haar herinnert en dat ik haar in de opstanding weer in mijn armen kan sluiten, helemaal gezond. Want Jehovah vindt elk leven kostbaar.
Getting Jehovah's thinking on a matter should be the first thing we do when making decisions. This is especially true when well-intentioned friends or family offer advice that may conflict with Bible principles. As we weigh a variety of options, follow Emma's good example of consulting God's Word in our Christian publications. This will help us make decisions that bring honor to Jehovah. Emma's Christian conduct helped her to navigate a potentially divisive moment in her marriage. But unfortunately, this system of things, and our imperfect flesh, can create extreme tension in a marriage. Can the Bible save a marriage that's in danger? The following interviews, while very frank, will show the exceeding value of God's own word, the Bible, to preserve that divine union.
Almost from the start of the marriage, it was not running smoothly, to say the least.
We were fighting constantly. Even the smallest things we would argue over, and it would just get blown out of proportion.
We couldn't communicate without it being an argument. Steadily, the arguments increased in frequency and intensity.
And you think, well, I'm not happy here, and that's when, I threatened to leave.
Sometimes I felt like completely giving up on the marriage. There would be arguments where you're packing the bags and saying you'd wish you'd never done it. Ultimately, it would end in insults. And
Jehovah was missing out of our marriage, and that was the essential part of making our marriage work.
A brother and sister that we'd known for a long time initially offered us a Bible study. They invited us to their family worship evening, have dinner, do the Watchtower with them, which we accepted.
The family worship arrangement helped because it wasn't just a Bible principle that you read about, but we saw them being applied in this couple's life. And so all of a sudden, I could see the cause and effect of a Bible principle. But the impact that it was having was tremendous because we could see how to apply a Bible principle and make it work.
I think it took a long time before things got better, honestly, but the turning point was coming back to Jehovah.
There were many principles that all of a sudden were like little light bulbs going off. Jesus in John 13:34, when he recommended his example.
Ephesians 5:33 eventually had an impact on me because there were articles that pointed out how important it is for a husband to feel respected by his wife. And I don't think I'd ever really appreciated that before. I just viewed it as a mechanical process. He's the head, he needs to have respect from his wife. I didn't recognise that it's important for a husband to feel respected, to then be able to take on his role as head.
We're so thankful to Jehovah for his patience. The Bible principles were always there. We just weren't making application of them. As soon as we started to make application, our marriage did a complete turnaround. Where we are now is totally different. The relationship that we have is what we wanted in the start but didn't know how to get it. It's just that application of Bible principles that's made it possible.
We were 17 actually when we met, 20 when we got married. Life was good for Tony and I. We were happy.
But then I got into another business that became the main focus in my life. It had quite a dramatic effect on our spirituality.
We went through some time there where we hardly saw each other. So there was a great deal of time that we spent apart.
Bible principles were ones that weren't brought into our life at that time. Bible reading was out of the picture. I started delving into viewing things that were really, really inappropriate. And then it eventually happened where I didn't really care what I viewed, and I didn't think about the consequences and of the unhappiness that it would cause.
It made me feel very extremely unloved. I felt very angry about his behaviour. I felt a lot of resentment towards him, a lot of bitterness. We ended up in separation to begin with. I left Tony. I walked away from him, I walked away from the marriage, walked away from the business, and eventually it ended up with me unscripturally divorcing Tony.
The elders that were assisting me, they helped me to see exactly how Jehovah felt about what I'd been doing, where my relationship was with him, and it was quite poor.
I felt, due to the betrayal that I had experienced, I did not have a problem with my conscience at all in going through the divorce. It seemed the logical and the best way for me to go.
Then with my Bible reading, I got to see Amos 5:15. It really had an effect on me because I needed to hate what is bad and love what is good.
One scripture that affected me was how Jehovah felt about divorce from Malachi. Altogether, it took us 15 years before we got together again.
I was just enjoying a day out in the field midweek, and I get home in mid-afternoon, and all of a sudden my mobile phone rang, and I heard Rhonda's voice, and what a delight it was when she was inviting me to accompany her to a cup of coffee somewhere to talk about things. If I didn't start having the scriptural intake and learning to love God's word, my life wouldn't have changed.
Without the Bible, Tony and I would not be together. The marriage would never ever have reconciled. We have become best friends, so we really enjoy being in each other's company and serving Jehovah together.
Married life now has certainly been benefited between both of us to see how beneficial the scriptures were.
Tony and I now are very much a couple, and so no matter what we deal with, it's us together.
When situations like these arise, it's not just our marriage that's affected. Our relationship with Jehovah is on the line. Our dear sister, for example, reached an emotional point where she felt the only solution was an unscriptural divorce. As we make our decisions in marriage, Jehovah's feelings on the subject found at Malachi chapter 2, verse 16 should be carefully considered. For I hate divorce, says Jehovah, the God of Israel. If you find your marital peace is threatened, review articles like the one in the May 15, 2012 study edition of The Watchtower, entitled, Take a Positive View of a Strained Marriage. It provides powerful counsel that can help to save and strengthen your marriage bond. In our program, we've seen a few ways that Satan will exert pressure on those securely wrapped in the bag of life. True Christians courageously stand up to the devil, never allowing him to pry us away from Jehovah's protection. At a recent Bethel morning worship, Brother Mark Sanderson of the governing body discussed 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 9, and outlined how we take our stand against Satan.
Is it possible to survive the attack of a roaring lion? Well, now I did some just quick checking on various wildlife websites, and here's what they say. Basically, they all give the same advice if you're being attacked by a lion. They say, hold your ground, never run, or turn back. In fact, one website says, a lion can run 50 miles per hour, so stand still. If you run, you will only die tired. Well, that's true. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 9 gives us exactly the same advice. It says, take your stand against him. Well, in this case, not against a literal lion, but against that roaring lion, Satan the devil, who is seeking to devour every single one of us. Our ability to stand firm when facing this lion, to be able to oppose him, to refuse to be intimidated by him, to refuse to run away or turn back, requires what the Apostle Peter next mentions there in verse 9, and Brother Crane so nicely covered in his comment. We have to take our stand against him firm in the faith. To be successful, we must have complete trust and complete confidence in Jehovah. Well, now, in that regard, let's look at an example of someone in Bible times who had that kind of confidence in Jehovah. This is in the days of King Jehoshaphat, when Judah was threatened by the combined forces of Moab, Ammon, and the inhabitants of the mountainous region of Seir. Now, let's begin by opening our Bibles and reading 2 Chronicles chapter 20 and verse 12. So here, Jehoshaphat is praying to Jehovah. He's pouring out his heart to him. And see what he says. "O our God, will you not execute judgment on them? For we are powerless before this large crowd that is coming against us, and we do not know what we should do. But our eyes are toward you." Well, Jehoshaphat was facing the lion. He said to Jehovah, "We don't know what to do." But Jehoshaphat had complete and total trust. He had firm faith in Jehovah. Well, what did Jehovah tell Jehoshaphat to do? See verse 17. "You will not need to fight this battle. Take your position." Does that sound familiar? "Take your position, stand still, and see the salvation of Jehovah in your behalf. O Judah and Jerusalem, do not be afraid or be terrified. Tomorrow go out against them, and Jehovah will be with you." Well, what did Jehovah tell them to do? He said, take a position in opposition to that military force, stand firm, refuse to run away, and see the salvation that will come from Jehovah. Well, in order to do that, Jehoshaphat and the people with him would need to have strong, firm, solid faith. Well, now to help the people, look at what Jehoshaphat said to them as they were getting ready for this battle in verse 20. You see just about middle of the verse? It says, Jehoshaphat stood up and said, "Listen to me, O Judah, and you inhabitants of Jerusalem. Put faith in Jehovah your God, so that you may be able to stand firm. Put faith in his prophets, and you will be successful." Well, that's exactly what happened. See, with that kind of confidence in Jehovah, with that firm trust in him, with that standing firm, what did Jehovah do? Well, according to verses 22 and 23, you'll remember what happened. The men of Ammon, Moab, and the inhabitants of the mountainous region of Seir, they all went to striking down one another. And verse 23 says, "And the Ammonites and the Moabites turned against the inhabitants of the mountainous region of Seir to destroy and annihilate them. And when they finished with the inhabitants of Seir, they helped to destroy one another." Well, Jehovah had rewarded their firm faith in him. The weapons that had been formed against Jehoshaphat and his people had no success. Well, now, sometimes we think, of course, that these kinds of situations only happened in Bible times. But it's amazing to see how our brothers in our modern day have had that same kind of faith and have stood firm against the lion. Here's just a couple of experiences that really touched my heart. Here's one about a brother named Pavel from Russia. In 1958, Pavel was arrested for religious activities. Accompanying me to the train, he says, the officer with me said, "Look at your wife for the last time, because you will never see her again." Well, there's the lion. I spent 6 months in solitary confinement before my trial. During interrogations, the investigators did everything to undermine my faith. Sometimes violence was used. I begged Jehovah to give me the strength to stay firm. But now look what happened. During a routine interrogation, the investigator called me into his study and he said, "Now we will show you what your organization is doing. Then you can see if it is God's work or not." Looking at me intently, he continued, "This year, your convention in New York was attended by 253,000 people in 2 stadiums. The convention lasted 8 days. The investigator strewed the table with photographs. In one of them, I saw happy delegates in colorful native dress embracing one another. Another photo showed Brother Noor giving a talk, and yet others showed the baptism. The investigator could not even imagine what I was feeling at that moment. I felt that I was attending the convention without ever having leaving the prison. I felt new strength flooding into me. It was just what I needed, and Jehovah generously blessed me in a special way. I was ready to endure further. Isn't that amazing? Here's another similar experience. 1960, also in Russia, a large publicized trial of Jehovah's Witnesses. About 300 persons were present in the courtroom, including many of our brothers and sisters. Well, as evidence against the brothers, the prosecutor decided to present a letter from Nathan H. Noor. One of the brothers who attended the trial said this: "The prosecutor loudly began to read a letter that had been intercepted by the KGB from Brother Noor to the brothers in the Soviet Union. For all of us witnesses present in the hall, it was a wonderful gift from Jehovah. The letter warmed our hearts. We heard wise counsel from the Bible and encouragement to serve our fellow believers lovingly and to stay faithful even under trials. The prosecutor read the letter from beginning to the very end. We listened with rapt attention. It seemed to us that we were attending a convention." Well, now, brothers, what additional lessons do we learn from these 2 experiences? When we stand our ground against Satan, firm in the faith, then Jehovah will do just what he promised in 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 10. Do you see what it says there? "But after you have suffered a little while, the God of all undeserved kindness, who called you to his everlasting glory and union with Christ, will himself finish your training. He will make you firm. He will make you strong. He will firmly ground you." So, brothers, can we survive the attack of a roaring lion? Absolutely. With firm faith, let's stand fast and see the salvation from Jehovah.
Firm faith is needed to resist the relentless attacks of Satan the devil. The modern-day examples brought out in the presentation are truly inspiring. However, did you notice that Brother Sanderson also applied the biblical example of Jehoshaphat? The Bible is full of accounts that can revive and renew our courage every time we read them. But here's a question. When should we develop the type of faith that can resist the attack of a roaring lion? Is it something only longtime servants of Jehovah can do? Ecclesiastes 12:1 says to remember then your grand Creator in the days of your youth. Young ones, do you find it a challenge to read the Bible every day? A few of your peers have excellent suggestions based on how they do their Bible reading and how they get the most benefit from it.
Ich habe es oft ein bisschen hinausgeschoben, also ich komme abends heim und dann bin ich erstmal müde oder will mich entspannen.
Ich war oft aus unterschiedlichsten Gründen müde und deswegen hat dann auch die Motivation gefehlt, überhaupt anzufangen.
Bei mir gab es auch viele Phasen, wo es mir total schwer gefallen ist, das tägliche Bibellesen wirklich durchzuziehen. Gerade auch im Zeitalter von sozialen Medien kann man den Tag auch gut mit anderen Sachen füllen.
Das hauptsächliche Hobby, was mir im Weg stand, das waren vor allem Filme. Damit habe ich mich eine Zeit lang sehr, sehr stark beschäftigt. Und das nimmt einem oft auch kostbare Zeit weg, die man besser hätte nutzen können.
So was mich bewegt hat, war der Gedanke, dass man durch das Bibellesen ein Gespräch mit Jehova führen kann, dass man zu ihm betet und Jehova dann durch die Bibel antwortet. Jehova hat ja versprochen, dass er in einem das Handeln und das Wollen wirken kann. Und bei Jehova bete ich dann eben erstmal um das Handeln. Das Wollen kommt dann automatisch.
Und dann habe ich mir einfach mal vorgenommen, dass ich es mal durchziehe. Ich fange einfach an und das habe ich gemacht mit meinem Lieblingsbibelbuch, damit es mir auch nicht so schwer fällt.
Also ich habe bei 1. Mose angefangen, einfach um mal durch die ganze Bibel durchzukommen.
Mein Lieblingsbibelbuch ist Esther. Das ist eine ganz besondere Person, finde ich auch. Und da speziell habe ich mir auch immer vorgestellt, wie auch ihre Situation war und was für ein Mensch sie war und wo ich mich jetzt auch in dem Bericht von Esther wiedersehen kann.
Für mich war so ein Leitfaden das wöchentliche Bibelleseprogramm. Die Motivation für mich dahinter war, dass es eben auch in der Zusammenkunft besprochen wird. Man hat so die Hilfen im Arbeitsheft dazu. Wenn die Brüder und Schwestern Kommentare geben, dann kann man die nachvollziehen, wenn man es selber gelesen hat. Man kann selbst Kommentare geben.
Ja, also wenn ich gerade die Bibel auch auf dem Handy lese, in der JW Library oder so, dann ist natürlich auch die Gefahr, dass man das Handy vibriert und man irgendwelche Nachrichten kriegt und dann muss man gleich drauf gucken. Da hat man so den Drang, oh, jetzt muss ich gleich gucken, wer hat mir geschrieben. Und da hilft es mir persönlich, dass ich dann auch mal den Flugmodus reinmache, dass mich wirklich gar nichts davon ablenken kann.
Also ich lese sehr gerne daheim, aber auch sehr gerne in der Natur, weil da ist mir Jehova einfach am nächsten.
Ich selber lese nie so, dass ich einfach nur die Begebenheit lese, sondern ich stelle mir selber Fragen. Also warum hat Jehova das hier aufschreiben lassen? Was bringt mir persönlich das? Und das hilft mir eben konzentriert auch zu bleiben und nicht nur oberflächlich zu lesen, weil sonst schon meine Gedanken sofort abschweifen.
Also damit mehr vom Inhalt bei mir hängen bleibt, habe ich auf einem Kongress eine schöne Hilfe kennengelernt. Es ging darum, dass man 4 Richtungen zum Nachsinnen eigentlich sich im Kopf behalten kann. Einmal die Richtung nach oben, was lerne ich aus dem Gelesenen wirklich über Jehova. Dann die Richtung nach unten, was erfahre ich über seinen Vorsatz, was möchte er mit der Erde machen. Dann die Richtung zu einem selber hin, was bringt mir persönlich das Gelesene jetzt. Und eben die Richtung von einem weg, dass man überlegt, wie könnte ich jetzt anderen Menschen mit diesem Bibeltext helfen. In der Library-App, da gibt es ja diese 4 Farben und ich benutze einfach für jede Richtung eine dieser Farben und markiere mir dann entsprechend das im Tablet oder auf dem Handy.
Ein Hobby von mir ist zum Beispiel das Zeichnen. Da hatte ich mir mal vorgenommen, dass ich die geistige Waffenrüstung aufzeichne und auch aus wie vielen Teilen sie besteht und wofür die einzelnen Teile auch stehen. Und das besonders hat mir geholfen, den Nutzen zu erkennen und wie viele Hilfsmittel uns Jehova eigentlich an die Hand gibt und dass Jehova uns eigentlich nie alleine lässt.
Was ich auch ganz toll finde, ist diese Rubrik Meine Bibelprojekte. Da kann man sich dann direkt ein Thema raussuchen, das mich persönlich auch interessiert und das so dann durchlesen.
Es ist Jehovas Wort und ich liebe ihn und möchte ihm natürlich auch gefallen. Und deswegen ist es sehr wichtig, auch sein Wort zu verstehen.
Wenn man dann so eine schwere Passage geknackt hat, dann fühlt es sich auf jeden Fall gut an. Das ist wie ein Erfolgserlebnis. Das bringt einen Jehova dann auch extrem näher.
Also oft geht es einem auch so, dass man gar nicht weiß, was man eigentlich beten soll oder wofür man Jehova eigentlich Dank sagen kann. Und da hat das persönliche Bibellesen sehr viel geholfen, dass ich genau gewusst habe, was ich eigentlich Jehova sagen will.
Das tägliche Bibellesen ist für mich sehr wichtig, weil es gibt mir sowas wie eine innere Ausgeglichenheit, wenn es um Situationen geht, die vielleicht ungewohnt sind, die sehr aufwühlend sind.
Ich weiß, dass Jehova, egal bei welchem Problem, immer schon die richtige Antwort parat hat.
Am Anfang ist es wirklich hart und man muss auch darum kämpfen, dass man es beibehält und man braucht wirklich Disziplin. Aber irgendwann stellt sich dann auch die Freude ein und dann geht es eigentlich von ganz alleine und man ist eigentlich froh, dass man angefangen hat. Ich denke, dass besonders, wenn Jehova sieht, wie sehr man sich anstrengt, dass er dann auch wirklich stolz auf einen ist. Und das ist eigentlich ja das Beste, was einem passieren kann.
These young brothers and sisters didn't just acquire knowledge, they drew closer to Jehovah This will help them build a fine foundation for their future. And you can too. It may not be easy at first, but as one young brother suggested, start with something that captures your interest. Try using the JW Library app or a handy notebook to keep track of points you hope to apply or discuss at family worship. This will make it a part of your daily routine that you look forward to. Each segment in the program has highlighted some way we can build a strong relationship with God. Our music video depicts the joy of marriage, where Jehovah is part of a threefold cord, one that cannot quickly be torn apart. The song is called Truly in Love.
There is a gift that comes from above, a lovely gift called being in love. When two hearts begin to beat as one, then a wonderful time has begun. Oh, it's simple, so easy, and it's something we know. With a threefold cord, love will grow with Jehovah to guide us in all that we do. How I love to be truly in love with someone like you. Someone like you. Oh, someone like you. Someone like you. Trials will come our way, but our love will grow stronger each day. We will build a bond that no one can break. We will build a love that no one will take. No, no, no one, no. It's simple, so easy, and it's something we know. With a threefold cord, love will grow with Jehovah to guide us in all that we do. How I love to be truly in love with someone like you. Someone like you. Oh, someone like you. Someone like you. Nothing can destroy our love. Nothing can this destroy. Precious gift is from our God up above. I'm so thankful. Exclusive devotion, love's as strong as death. You are bone of my bones, you are flesh of my flesh. Such an excellent woman. In all that you do, I will spend all my life loving you. I want you to know how I feel, 'cause my love for you is so very real. I bless the day you came into my life. I bless the day I made you my wife. Ooh, yes I do. It's simple, so easy, and it's something we know. With a threefold cord, oh, love will grow with Jehovah to guide us in all that we do. How I love to be truly in love with someone like you. Someone like you. Someone like you. Someone like you. How I love to be truly in love with someone like you.
So many of our brothers and sisters can agree with the words of that song. With a threefold cord, love will grow. In marriage, in youth, really in all things we've considered, Jehovah will be there to guide us. What will be the result? We'll find the warmth and security of being securely wrapped in Jehovah's bag of life. We hope you enjoyed our program. We conclude by heading to the beautiful tropical island of Sri Lanka, off the southeast coast of India in the Indian Ocean. Over 6,000 publishers make up the 112 congregations on the island, including 13 isolated groups. As you travel throughout the country, the scars of decades-long civil war are still evident. However, our brothers and sisters display the beautiful spirit of Christian unity. Publishers preach the good news to those on the coast, high in the mountains, and in the bustling cities. More than 8,000 Bible studies are being conducted, and over 650 brothers and sisters are in the pioneer work. Due to the dense population in the city of Colombo, those in metropolitan witnessing see an average of almost 17,000 people in just one 8-hour period. High in Sri Lanka's Tea Mountains is a small congregation in the town of Badula. Their productive ministry takes them into banana plantations, jungles, and mountain tea estates as they search for those receptive to the good news. Despite differing ethnic backgrounds, they're completely united in worship and brotherly affection. Our brothers and sisters who are wrapped up in Jehovah's bag of life send you their warm, loving greetings from the mountaintops of Sri Lanka. Thank you for watching. From the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is JW Broadcasting.